Andras here. When I'm not co-hosting The World is Wrong podcast, I'm hosting and producing the Radio 8-Ball podcast, where we answer questions by picking songs at random, like picking musical tarot cards. We've hosted musical divinations for people like John C. Reilly, Patricia Arquette, Tig Notaro, and Fred Armisen, and hosted over 200 songwriters, providing the randomly chosen answers from Inara George and Dan Byrne to Mose Allison and Alan Toussaint. That's Radio 8-Ball, all one word. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts and download our app from the iTunes App Store.
I'm Zack Carlson, and you are listening to The World is Wrong podcast with Andras Jones and Brian Connolly, usually.
We're here to tell you how the world is wrong. The world is wrong about Destroyer.
Welcome to The World is Wrong, an extremely positive podcast where we celebrate films the world is wrong about. I am your host, Andras Jones, here for the second of two special guest host editions with Zack Carlson. Welcome back to The World is Wrong, Zack.
I am pleased to be here.
And what are we talking about? What film are we talking about?
Well, this is the fourth of your Nicole Kidman episodes, correct?
Yes, this is the fourth, and I don't want to say final, but the final of our for this month of Nicole Kidman. Yes.
So this is maybe, I guess, her most recent film that is going to be discussed here, and it is Destroyer by director Karyn Kusama, which came out, I guess, 2-3 years ago, and it just kind of vanished like a butterfly's wing in the wind. It was gone, so people didn't talk about it. And it deserves much more.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. I am very excited to discuss this film, also in the context of your appreciation for the genre of the gritty crime revenge thrillers. I feel like this is going to be a really exciting conversation. And we're also going to get in a little bit to the world of Karyn Kusama as a director. In preparation for this, I've done a lot of research on just in terms of just watching most of her films, and I'm pretty excited in the sense of not just is Destroyer a great film, but now I feel like there's a new director who's on my radar who I am looking forward to see what they do next. So if you're okay with it, let's just play a clip from the film, and then we'll come back and you can tell us about it.
Dragging anchor there, buddy.
Dragon anchor.
You know, the LT is looking for you. You need to take care of your own press and shit right now, don't you?
I got it.
Hey, Belle, look, this is handled.
What is this?
What, you want us?
Yeah, come on.
Shot 3 times at least from the exit wounds right here.
What's that?
38 dropped at the scene. Maybe a ghost gun. No serial, no prints. No witnesses yet. Look.
Am I wasting your time?
City's time. You have no role here. That's our scene.
Who is it?
No ID, no idea. There's a few of those, blown die pack. We're waiting on tech. All right, guys. Let's start bringing everybody down now. Start sweep. Underground out. Way down. Look, Belle. Look, this is covered, okay? Just go lie down.
What about if I know who did this?
Well, I don't know. Then we could probably use that, detective. I mean, you gonna solve this right now, then, or what? Yeah, fuck you, too.
You mentioned earlier that, there's the whole revenge genre and, like, the the harsh streets and all this stuff. And the movie is about revenge. It is a renegade cop, and it's all those things that have become such common tropes in movies. I mean, I have a tattoo of Charles Bronson, and like this is my favorite type of movie, vigilantes, all that stuff. That's like what I live for. But Destroyer is unique in that she is so filled with wrath and with the desire for vengeance that she has nowhere to put it. And I don't want to get right into the reasoning for that yet, but it's just, it's like integral to a revenge movie that who is going to be, revenged upon, who the vengeance is going to rain on. And in Destroyer, that's very unclear until the movie's almost over, and then the answer is really unexpected and brilliant, I think. So, plot-wise, it's just about this rage-driven, middle-aged, unhealthy policewoman who is trying to basically backtrack through all the failures of her life to identify where things went wrong and how she can get even for that. But when she finally gets there, the answer is not so pleasant for her.
It certainly isn't.
Yeah.
So, how do you feel like the world is wrong about this film?
It's funny because I don't think I heard anything negative about it. I just heard a few blasé reactions to it, and then a lot of silence, just tumbleweeds. And the first time I saw it, it was at a film festival that I work for, and we screened it before we booked it for the festival, and I was completely taken by it, and I loved it. And I insisted on no, we got to give this a really good slot because this is going to be a big deal. And I thought this movie was going to really connect with people. But it disconnected with people for some reason. I still can't figure it out. And I think that I'm really looking forward to our conversation because maybe you will have some insight as to, why I love this movie more than everyone else. I really don't know.
Yeah, well, when I mentioned it to you, I think this is you who said this, that you felt like this is one of your favorite films of the last, that this and Nightcrawler are your two favorite films of the last 10 years. Is that what you said?
Yeah, and it's funny because those movies have some similarities, but...
Well, I mentioned that because I feel like that, when you told me that, it hit this, it made me drop into a deeper understanding of Destroyer just aesthetically, of oh yeah, it is, I guess it's true noir, right? They both are dealing with people who are on the outside of society, sort of inside and outside of society, living in this really morally ambiguous territory. They're not particularly sympathetic characters, but
definitely.
But we follow them, and we live in their noir world. Yeah, I guess. Well, let's start this one with talking about Nicole Kidman, the character actor, because for most of this film, it's like a monster movie. She looks like she looks and walks like a Walking Dead kind, not the show Walking Dead, but a Walking Dead kind of character. And
oh yeah,
we've talked about it throughout this month, how one of Kidman's, I don't want to say her tricks, but her strengths is working in silence. And it feels like this film, even though there are points when she still will go to that whispery Nicole Kidman place, for the most part, this is as close as she gets to sort of a Tom Waits growl. She is definitely not playing to any of her usual strengths as an actor. And I don't know about you, but I loved it. I thought it was just, I couldn't take my eyes off her.
It's funny because several people at the screening, the premiere screening that we did, said it took them 10 minutes, 15 minutes, even 20 minutes to realize it was her, to recognize her physically. Because she just is playing such a different human than she's ever played. And there's no Kidman glamour, and there's none of the timeless beauty of Nicole Kidman, who's looked exactly the same for 30 years. That's gone in this movie. you know, and it's a whole new thing for her, not just visually, but also the character's attitude and everything. You said the way she carries herself, the way she walks. It's all non-Kidman style, like very much.
She must have had a blast with this as an actor to get to play this role. Like, you don't get the sense of watching her like, oh, well, she's having fun. But
Right.
for someone who really builds her characters, I don't want to say outside in, but in a certain, like, that so much of her stuff is sort of invisible character work, to be able to play something that was really so far from it. And just, it must feel fun for her to get to walk with a little bit more swagger. Like, if we think about Birth, the last episode that we talked about, there was just this nervous fragility to her all throughout that you could think, okay, well, I guess that's who Nicole Kidman is. But then you look at this and it's just, there's none of that. That constantly moving butterfly, energy inside of a lot of her characters. She's just grounded and sort of dead inside, and still lots of stillness that isn't active and alive like that. Like, if you put a long shot on Nicole Kidman in this, it would be, I think it would be still interesting, but there would certainly not be as much going on because her mind's just moving a lot slower and more methodically. Oh God, I love it. Oh.
And typically in a movie like this, when a character has that sort of just iron wall of a personality, it's because they're so confident in their invulnerability or whatever. Whereas her character isn't like an action hero. It's not like Steven Seagal's, like reaction to situations. It's like she really doesn't give a shit if she dies at all. Like, it really doesn't matter. So it's not like she's impervious to pain. It's just like that she's already in so much that she doesn't even notice it.
Yeah.
So it's a very different lead for a renegade cop vengeance movie, which is essentially what it is, but it's so unlike any other one.
Yeah. Do you want to walk us through a little bit just to walk us through the plot a little bit of this?
I can do it. So, a single mother, policewoman, just like miserable hunk of burning rage. This is all this one woman, and she realizes that some shadow from her past is re-entering her reality in LA, and it kicks off this need in her to get revenge for something, but we don't know what it is. And whatever it is clearly annihilated her life. And the movie is set up in a way where you're crossing back and forth from 15 years earlier, you're 20 years earlier, and you're basically building the blocks of what, just completely devastated this woman and what made her drained of all emotion and all hope and of all of her future. But it's not done in that, winky Memento way that all these people adopted after that movie came out. It feels very honest and very natural. And it's hard to, it doesn't feel like a gimmick at all. It really does build the story in the best possible way.
So I'm going to just jump in a little bit just to fill this out. So she's a cop who basically went undercover on this drug ring, and she falls for her partner who she's undercover with, and they get caught up in this world, and there's a bank robbery that's going to be taking place, and they decide to take part in this, and this leads to the death of her lover, and now she's going back and trying to get revenge on all those gang members. And to some degree, it gets more and it definitely gets more complicated than that. But that's that's kind of the setup.
Yeah, for the first 80% of the movie, that's what you think you're being told a story about. And
there's some great character actors in this. One of my favorite sort of newer actors who he hasn't really got many leads, but Scoot McNairy is in this, and Karyn Kusama, I probably met him directing him in *Halt and Catch Fire*, which is a series that I really loved, and he plays Nicole Kidman's ex-husband,
Right.
who they're raising a daughter with. And it was great to see him show up there. And there's a fun scene where she beats the hell out of Bradley Whitford, which is something that I'm sure we've all wanted to do at one point or another in our lives. He's fine, but yeah, there is a little bit of a Point Blank feeling to some of this.
Oh. Which is one of my top 3 action movies.
Yeah,
Ever. Yeah.
I mean, when you were watching this, did you have particularly that scene, the scene with Bradley Whitford, made me feel some Point Blank kind of feelings?
You know, I want to be honest. Like, I did not think about Point Blank for this movie, but you're right. There are definitely correlations, and I should have, since I'm so obsessed with that movie. But yeah, and similar to, like, you know, that's a Lee Marvin movie, right? And so he has 2 states of being in that movie, right? It's either like catatonia or like just revenge rage, right? And I guess that could be said about her in this movie, pretty much.
And for her, there's also this mother thing. So there's a lot of, I don't want to say that the revenge is driven by her motherhood or her sense of motherhood, but during all of this, her daughter, who's at this point, like, must be 16, 17 years old, she's running around with a guy who is older than her and is a creep, and who Kidman's character is also trying to protect her daughter from, but her daughter hates her. You just get, there's this whole family drama side to this that gives the film, I don't know, I don't want to say that it gives the film heart, because that's not exactly what it gives it. It gives it a different sense of stakes than you see in this genre when it's fathers. I guess that's the only way I can describe it. There's just a different energy to a father's sense of protection and revenge than a mother's. And that this film, like, she's as tough as actually she's a little bit like Ben Kingsley's grandmother. Like, she's not a good, I don't want to say that she's a good mother, but she is driven by motherhood, and this film is, you know, gives a voice to her motherhood as a part of this character, which you know, just, it takes up a good chunk of the emotional space of this film. And I don't know how that, I can't tell as I think about it because she's a bad mother, definitely. I mean, I don't know. No offense, moms out there. I know you're all doing your best, but you could look at this film and be like, at least I'm not Aaron Bell in Destroyer, you know.
Right.
But yeah, what do you think about that? Because you watch this genre a lot, and a lot of this kind of the cop revenge thriller kind of film. This, a lot of times it's the revenge for the death of a child, or for the abuse of a child, or something like that.
Yeah.
What do you think about how the way motherhood plays into this story?
And you're right. Even the most boneheaded action movies, like Commando, is just about him getting his daughter back, which is, like, you know, one of the most beloved dumb action movies ever. But in this one, is it okay if I go into a spoiler?
Yeah.
Already?
Spoil away.
It's clear that she's never really connected with her daughter as a person. Like, you know, like, they had their moments probably when she was a toddler or whatever, but they are very disconnected, you know, family-wise, emotionally in the movie. And it's, you know, at the end of the film, we realize that this daughter is not Scoot McNairy's biologically, but the boyfriend of Nicole Kidman who died. And I think the only reason she even cares about her daughter's well-being is because that's the last piece she has of her boyfriend, who she's still in love with 20 years later after his death. Or I guess 16 years later, because of the age of the girl. But, like, that's what I got out of it. It's like, this is the last piece I have of him.
Do you think it's interesting? I'm into synchronicities. I think it's interesting that in Birth, we measure the time between a tragedy and the present by the age of a child. The film is all about it's all about the 10 years really between the death of Nicole Kidman's character's husband in birth and when the kid arrives. And in this crime surrounded by her that happens right when she realizes she's pregnant. And then we're measuring the film by the age of her daughter, whose safety, in some sense, she's fighting for. As again, but in a very conflicted way, like because she's also fighting to try and, I don't know, make good her what she. Well, this is where I guess again we're fully into spoilers. So what we find out at the end of this film, as it tells its story non-linearly, is that it was her idea to participate in the crime, to try and make the money so that they could run away together with their kid. So all of this came from her bad decision. And something about the bleak honesty of that, I think that's part of why it gets to live in that Nightcrawler zone. Like there's just nothing. The film is easy to watch, but the film does not make anything like an easy or pat or one-dimensional answer. And that is the key to it.
Yeah, because ultimately, since we're laying it out, like the person she's getting revenge against through the entire movie is herself. You know, like she's really just wants to be dead for what she did to him. And she takes it out on everybody else involved, but there's never a sense of accomplishment or successful vengeance all the way up the chain of the people she blames, because the person who's most to blame for her anger is herself. And so the movie's about somebody who's like lashing out to get revenge on the world for something that they did wrong. And in that way, it's like, I've never seen another movie like it.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I'm a big fan of, it's different, but I'm a big fan of Mr. Arkadin, the Orson Welles film, where he sends someone else out to, sends out someone to do research on him to find out if anyone could find out his crimes. But it's different, but there's this sense, and maybe, I mean, I guess it is Wellesian, because it also has maybe a touch of evil kind of quality, like this bad cop at the end of a run, and they tried it's like someone who came in with the best intentions, made some bad decisions, has become a villain, and then the film is untying this knot. You know, it's like in another film there would be someone who was trying, like nobody's trying to catch her. Like usually in another film there would be some other cop who was still trying to unravel this case and get to the bottom of it. Like she does have a partner who's kind of doing that, but he's not. He's just checking in with her. He's loyal to his cop friend, even though she's a total mess. And she is the cop taking out vengeance. She's both the cop running, she's trying to catch herself. It's so good.
Yeah, I was going to say that. It's like she is both characters. So, yeah. Oh. And she has no relationship with the people around her. She has no successful relationship with herself. Like she's so disconnected from her own life, and it's like her life ended when her boyfriend's did. So which is what I said about her in Birth. Like when her husband died, she didn't feel anything until the boy showed up. And it's kind of a similar thing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I was listening to an interview that the director did with Christopher Nolan, and she was saying that it's a genre film and it's all these things, but in a lot of ways, it's just a film about middle age.
Because of regrets and the way that you...
Yeah, you're still vital enough to feel like you have, and I'm putting words into it now, but it feels like you're vital enough to still have the energy to try and correct the things you did wrong. And you're wise enough to realize how many things you have done wrong. And to try, but also... it's a hard road. Like this film is like, but to try and correct the things that you may be wrong or right about that you think you did right or wrong is just a treacherous path. I mean, obviously, it's different in this film than it is in Birth or than it is in yours or my life. But I just think it's interesting that that's what she's exploring.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's written by Karyn Kusama's husband, Phil Hay, and he has a writing partner, Mark. I'm trying to remember.
Matt Manfredi or Matt Manfredi.
Mark Manfred, yeah.
No, Matt.
Or
Matt.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I apologize to them for mangling the name, but yeah. So, and they, she knew that she wanted to make a movie that was grounded, and her filmography definitely has stuff that's very grounded and very not. But then her husband and writing partner just came up with this character and developed it with her, apparently, and it just feels so confident and so like such an established world, right off the bat. And it is kind of similar to the world in Nightcrawler, where it's just the under the freeways of Los Angeles, like To Live and Die in LA and that stuff where you don't see any of the palm trees that LA is known for. It's just the garbage parts, and it's really compelling for some reason. So,
well, just because we are in the month of Kid Mania, one reason is Nicole Kidman's performance, no doubt about it. But we are talking about Karyn Kusama and her writing partner Phil Hay. And I don't know if Matt Manfredi works on all of their stuff, but I'd like to she has a small enough filmography, and between us, we've seen all of them. And so I just wanted to give sort of quick shout outs because it's a pretty impressive run. I think that's also part of where maybe this is where The World Is Wrong is, not just that The World Is Wrong about Destroyer, but Destroyer should have put, and maybe it did, I hope it did for Hollywood, should have put Karyn Kusama on the map for fans of film, because it stands on the top of some other pretty great work. So her first film from 2000 was Girl Fight. I just recently watched it. It was the film that discovered Michelle Rodriguez, and she plays a girl who wants to box, and there aren't other women boxers or girl boxers. She's in high school, and she's just she's a tough kid in high school. She gets introduced like Marlon Brando. The introduction shot of her is also a great introduction shot of Karyn Kusama as a director. Just okay, this is the meeting of a great face and a great camera. And then basically she fights boys, and she's going out with, there's a guy that she likes at the gym, but she ultimately has to fight him. It's pretty great. It's pretty great. Also, it's a first feature. I think John Sayles shows up as a cameo in it, and I think he helped her make it in terms of helping her get the financing. And she actually was a boxer. So it's one of those sort of perfect first films, character study, boxer film, but turned on its head, that introduces a pretty big star. And then
Kusama was a boxer?
Yeah, Kusama. She worked out as a boxer. I don't know if she was an actual professional boxer, but she was a boxer for quite a while. And then 2 years after, I read that in her Wikipedia. A few years after it, she wrote a screenplay about this character, about I guess imagining this character, or maybe just based upon her own experience of fighting dudes. And you haven't seen Girl Fight?
I should have, and I have not yet.
No shoulds. But this is one I definitely recommend that anyone who likes Destroyer, it's worth it to take the time to just walk back and see all of these. And I haven't seen all of them, but I did see Aeon Flux, which, going from Girl Fight to Aeon Flux seems like a really tough transition for any director. Aeon Flux was a big sort of sci-fi comic book. I mean, from what I saw, kind of a mess, but I remember being in a hotel or someplace and seeing it come on at one part, like seeing one segment of it years ago. It's a scene where Charlize Theron and another character are having to sort of do gymnastics across this grassy field that also has these blades coming out. And it's so, I remember watching it and being like, this film could be, seeing that one part, just thinking that this could be pretty bonkers, this film. I might actually watch that. It looks pretty amazing. And then I never did get around to watching it. And then when I watched it just recently for this, it was the one that didn't really hold up. But it did introduce Charlize Theron as an action star. So she's 2 for 2 in terms of doing a great job of elevating her leading lady, which I feel like, or I mean, maybe leading lady is the wrong word. Her star, her female star,
Right.
In ways that made them just tough and without becoming men, being super tough. And
Right.
you can see that that's all sort of like she builds Destroyer on that. And then the one for me that was just like, holy shit, how is this person not on every list of like super directors? Jennifer's Body. People, see this movie. It's so it's a script by Diablo Cody. It's with Megan Fox and Amanda Seyfried. I think that's how you pronounce her name. And it's just, I don't love horror films, and it's a horror film, I guess, but it's I don't even want to describe it because it works with the genre. So it's about a demon who eats boys. In a weird way, it's Under the Skin, like 5 years earlier, and way more fun. In fact, it would make a fantastic double feature with Under the Skin. Yeah, and in a way, like it's that thing of like Under the Skin is a very pretentious in a bad way, but a pretentious, very thoughtful, really, intense guy's way of expressing this thing. And then to see the confidence and just fuck you rock and roll sensibility that Kusama and Cody bring to this, it's like, I'm serious. I'm talking about it, I'm kind of buzzing because I feel like even though we're talking about Destroyer, I feel like not enough people I had never heard of, and I had never even thought of watching this film. And now it's like a film that I could do a whole episode on, Jennifer's Body. And that's the extent of my awareness of Karyn Kusama's work. But you saw The Invitation. Tell us about that.
Right. Which is the only movie I had seen before I saw Destroyer. And the problem with The Invitation is that it's really, more so than almost any movie I can think of, a movie where you want to know absolutely nothing going into it. Because it's not like it has some big reveal at the end. It's like every minute detail on every character and everything is just, it's better left unsaid. So it's an impossible movie to write about, to talk about. You have to take people at their word that it's really effective. But what it did do was bring her back down to a movie that's probably around the size of Girl with Bite, where it's very grounded, very character-based, no blades popping out of fields at all. And that's the same level. I mean, Destroyer, I think, was a higher budget movie than The Invitation, but it's certainly really grounded. And it takes place in living rooms and gutters, and it's just a human-sized story. And The Invitation is too, even though it's more of a kind of a horror thriller, and not even saying too much, but yeah, it's great. But it's just a very what's funny is her movies got big. I mean, obviously Aeon Flux was the largest, but and then The Invitation shrinks down to basically be really claustrophobic and just a tiny story that's really effective and well acted and well directed, but small as hell. And then again started to grow a little bit with Destroyer, kind of reached back out into the world. But yeah, it definitely felt like she got very, very interested in characters around them, leading everything, and which probably isn't the case, I'm guessing, with Aeon Flux, but I haven't seen it, so I should shut up.
I mean, honestly, I can't even imagine to go from directing Girl Fight to directing Aeon Flux, that's just too much. I don't know how, like, I don't care how good, like, yeah, I don't care how good you are. And I think, thinking about it, it's like, it's something you couldn't say no to. Like, the opportunity to do that is so great. But, you know, just those kind of films aren't really, it's like the Scorsese thing. They're not even really movies. It's really not, certainly not in her wheelhouse. And then to just watch again, like with Jennifer's Body, it seems like it's a, I don't know what budget, but it's a, you know, it definitely is a bigger movie, but it's also, it seems like that's the follow up to Girl Fight. And Flux feels like, what are you going to do? Say no to a chance to direct this huge movie? But it doesn't feel self-generated. Whereas Jennifer's Body is just such a, yeah, it's a perfect follow-up to Girl Fight. And Destroyer feels like the perfect follow-up to Jennifer's Body. And I'm really looking forward to seeing The Invitation now. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think from what I know of your taste, you're really going to like that one a ton. So. And
she also worked on a bunch of TV shows. She directed episodes of Billions, of Masters of Sex, of Man in the High Castle, Halt and Catch Fire. Those are all shows that I really liked. And The Outsider, not to be confused with Outsider, the show on Vice that you were a host and co-creator of.
Yeah, there's a 2-year stretch where there was 3 shows with Outsider in the title that came out. And one of them was the Stephen King, story that Karyn Kusama did some episodes of, apparently. And then another one was me and 2 friends just like, doinking around making short documentaries for Vice. And I can tell you which one made more money. But anyway, but it was, it's funny. And then there's this other film, Outsiders, about hillbilly criminals. So.
Well, and then also there's The Outsiders, which was the Francis Ford Coppola movie about the S.E. Hinton novel. And yeah, I'm pretty sure there's got to be an Outsider before that, written by, some French existentialist, but it's not coming to the tip of my tongue. I find it interesting that the episode of The Outsider that Karyn directed was called The One About the Yiddish Vampire. And
that sounds good.
I was recently working with someone trying to develop a Jewish vampire film. But unfortunately, the director got deported to Canada. But now we're kind of moving away from before we move on from Destroyer. I think we've made it pretty clear. You should see this film. You should check out this director. If you're not in love with Nicole Kidman by now, you probably have decided to wait until the end of this month because to check back in with us, because we have been diving so deep into her filmography. But before we move on from Destroyer, Nicole Kidman, Karyn Kusama, is there anything else that you'd like to say on these topics?
I think, to me, really quickly about Destroyer is it does this weird thing where almost every movie that's an action film, a revenge film, vigilante movie, they build their momentum, to this final conflict, right? And this movie doesn't have a final conflict because it's internal, ultimately. So the momentum, and also the movie's jumping around by decades. So the momentum never builds, but the intensity maintains, which is kind of contradictory. So it's kind of like she pulls off, Kusama and Kidman both pull off this impossible feat of making you feel more and more tense and invested in this revenge story while it's just zigzagging all over the place emotionally and in time and everything. And it's really special, and it's really unlike anything. I think there's a lot of people who probably just assume it's like female Death Wish, and it's not.
No.
It's not anything that has existed before. It's really unique, and it really deserves more credit.
Yeah, in its own way. I mean, we talked about Birth last week, and in its own way, this film pulls off a similar masterful magic trick. And I think you detailed it correctly. And I think one of the things that you get because of that is that by the time the movie gets to the end, what would be the sort of classically bleak ending of a film of this story, this kind of story, ends up being a strange moment of beauty and transcendence. Like it's actually emotionally satisfying, but not in the way that like the cathartic violence way that another film does, in this almost, I don't want to say religious way, but in this, there's just, it ends on a holy moment.
Yeah, and honestly, it's not a happy ending, but she does get what she wants.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah.
This is the one thing we're not giving away. This is one thing we're not saying explicitly.
But it's I mean, again, we assume that people, I'm really with these shows, you should always watch the films before you listen to it. I know some people don't mind, and then, you know, we had one listener to the show write in and say, hey, could you stop telling us to watch the movies before? Some of us just like to listen to you tell us the whole story of the movie. I was like, okay, but don't get mad at us for giving spoiler alerts. I mean, you have a unique kink, and we appreciate that.
Hey y'all, it's Amy from the Pink Among Men podcast. I know, you are really, really busy with your sourdough starter and your 4th rewatch of The Office. So it's totally cool if you don't have time for an informative, perspective-bending podcast right now. But if you do have a few minutes to spare in your jam-packed schedule, I want to offer Pink Among Men for your consideration. Pink Among Men is a weekly conversation on different perspectives, gender, and marginalization in the creative community. We chat with actors from shows you watch, directors who make movies that you want to watch, and comedians from stand-up shows that you'll probably never watch, but you should. Every Wednesday, they sit down to talk about the tragedy and the triumph that comes with not being a white dude in arts and entertainment. You probably don't have time for it, but maybe subscribe so you can listen when you're a little less busy. Get Pink Among Men on Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. We're a proud member of the Paper House Network.
So, speaking of unique kinks, we teased it out in last week's episode. You and I were part of an historic musical, theatrical production experience in Olympia, Washington in, I think it was 1999 or 2000.
Yeah.
We were both sang and acted and to some degree danced in The Transfused from Nomi Lamb and The Need. When people call you to interview you about your participation in The Transfused, Zach, how do you describe it?
It was I don't say post-apocalyptic, I guess like entropic, primarily like gay rock opera that was sort of like new wave punk metal musical.
Yeah, and it was a phenomenon. It was super indie, and when it happened, there was an element of kismet to it, and it was on the cover. It was like it was on the cover. It was in Newsweek magazine, and it was very zeitgeisty for a moment. And
it was?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
And actually, you ended up playing the role that I turned down. So the story is like, this where you have all these people living in this toxic environment where they can't go outside and they have to take the medicine from the company, from the corporation that keeps them high on and weak from this medicine. And they work in the fat-free factory making fat-free fat. And they're policed by this military guard that I ended up being a part of. And the whole thing is controlled by you and your wife are the sort of the corporate or a wife and sometimes partner, and so like you play different characters, but you're the ones controlling the corporation and living in the sort of fat-free world. Is that how you describe it?
Yeah, it was very pre Donald and Melania type characters, really.
Yeah.
Like, it really was. But, like 15 years before that or more?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. But, yeah, it was a very dark view on the future, but accurate. So, can't fault it.
Yeah, so when we auditioned, Nomi offered me that, and I was like, oh, there's enough I was like, Nomi, enough people in this town already, like, think that of me already. I can't do that. You got to, if I'm going to do this, you got to let me play someone who's not, I don't want to be the butt of that joke. And it was great watching you do it, because I was like, oh, everything worked out great, because then they actually offered me a role where I got to sing some songs that I was really, really happy to get to sing and explore some territory that I was excited to explore. But I also got to watch you, and you were super funny, and you just brought a great angry punk rock happiness to it, if that makes sense. Like you played it, those no means no shirts with the happy smiley guy on them?
Yeah, the guy who's hanging himself while smiling.
Yeah. That would be the energy that I feel like that you brought to that. I don't know how many people listen to this are going to know what we're talking about. Maybe I can find a video of it somewhere. I'll post it in here. But I don't know. I feel like that might be one of my greatest experiences as an actor. Probably.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, you ended up getting like really featured moments in it, and like your character became more, varied than a lot of them. So, like multi-level. And so, yeah, that was a really fun event. But it's crazy because for those of you listening who don't know Olympia is like the size of like a toenail, and it produced this successful like live stage rock opera, and that's like kind of insane.
Yeah, with the band The Need, with a cast of probably like 35, 40 people and a crew of another 20 more.
Yeah.
And we ran sold out shows like two weekends in a row. And if they had decided to keep it running, oh boy, I know there's a lot of people who have regrets about that, but it was a bright and shining moment. And now, having gone through these 2 episodes, it really does run the gamut, Zach. We've now collaborated on 3 things. 1, Troll 2, Best Worst Movie. 2, The Transfused. And 3, these podcasts.
We did it.
It's pretty exciting. So, is there anything of yours we can promote?
Yeah, well, so your co-host, Brian, he and I spent almost a decade like just annihilating ourselves doing research for a book we wrote called Destroy All Movies, The Complete Guide to Punks on Film. And, we're going to be doing an expanded edition that's going to come out in a few years. That's going to have it's going to be thicker than a phone book. And then also in June, my friends Joe and Annie and I did a book called Bleeding Skull that's coming out, in a few months. And it's from Fantagraphics Publishers, the same ones who did Destroy All Movies. And it's kind of like a map of all the backyard camcorder horror movies of the end of the 20th century. And it's a totally uncelebrated genre of people that had to sell their truck to make a movie about, vampires or whatever. So that's called Bleeding Skull, a 90s trash horror odyssey.
I'm curious. Does my character's haircut in Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, qualify as a punk?
Nope. Sorry.
That's okay. It would have been. It would stretch the credibility of your project if it did. I really appreciate that. I appreciate that. You can't help it. You once you're an actor, you're always an actor. You're always trying to even if you're not right for the gig, you're like, could it work? And then the director's like, no. And you're like, yeah, probably not.
Well, the girl in part 3 in the alley.
Oh, yeah, Jennifer Rubin. She's...
Yeah.
I guess, yeah, exactly. Now, if you were doing a book about white karate guys, then
You would be all over.
I'd be all
You'd
over
on the
that.
front cover. You and Chuck Norris, hand in hand on the cover.
Oh, geez, I'm in such terrible company. And you're here to. I think probably what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna record something with Brian to close this out, because this is the last episode of our month of Kid Mania, and I'd like to let him get the last word in here. So, are there any you want to hand the torch off to Brian in any way? Anything you want to that he'll hear this and he'll come in right after.
It's been really fun to hang out with you again, because you and I haven't seen each other much in the last decade and a half. And I'm really excited to be part of this thing that I'm glad you're doing with Brian specifically, because not only is he my creative partner, but he is my best friend and he is the love of my life. So I'm really glad that you guys let me be part of, climb up in your clubhouse and hang out for these 2 episodes.
Hi, everybody. Sorry to interrupt this show that you're probably enjoying, but I'm comedian Kevin Dombrowski, who you probably don't know. Joined weekly by my producer, Adam, a little bit more well-known than me, Hineker. Say hi, Adam.
True, he's got a point.
Dial it back. Each episode, I'll sit down with a very famous comedian that you probably do know, and if they're not famous, you probably know them anyway, and we'll break down what's happening in the world by making fun of all of it. This is Just Joking on the Paper House Network. No interviews, no arguments, just jokes. Now, back to your show that you were already enjoying.
Hi, I'm Brian.
And I'm AJ.
And we have a podcast called The Director's Wall,
examining a filmmaker's career, film by film. First up was M. Night Shyamalan, then Francis Ford Coppola. Who's next? Is there anything to this whole auteur theory? Find out on
The Director's Wall.
Subscribe via Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or your preferred listening platform.
Well, what do you think about Zach's nice words about you, Brian?
He's too kind. I think he's just like my mother. He's just known me too long that he doesn't know the bad parts. It's blinded by his love. It's too much praise for such a small man.
So, just for the listeners, he's back. Brian Connolly's back.
Hello.
You missed him, but you didn't miss him too much because you were enjoying his friend Zack Carlson. So
exactly.
What do you think about Zach's, Zach as a co-host? Were you listening to it and thinking you kicking yourself for not being a part of these, or were you thinking maybe you could get out of this entirely and see if you could do all of them?
It's good. I feel like it's good that we're separated like this, because if we were both on it, number one, the episode would be 5 hours long. And then it would be full of lots of boring in-jokes that no listener would care to listen to. So I think it's good that it's either him or I, but not together on a podcast. Because I think it's just too much.
Okay,
but he did good. I think he did good. No, hopefully we can have him back. Again for something else. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, whenever you feel like playing hooky, just tag him in. Well, this brings us to the end of our month of Kidmania, Brian.
I know it's maybe a yearly thing. She's going to keep making good movies and hopefully not keep being underrated as a great actress, but maybe keep making interesting little things that not everyone sees that we can champion. I don't know.
As much as I love Nicole Kidman, I feel like that might be unfair to all of the other actors and directors in the world. And there's probably at least one other deserving person in the world of cinema that we can devote a month to. But I'm pretty sure I would say that I'm almost 100% sure that we will cover more Kidman films.
It'll happen.
She just always works with the best people, and she's so great, and she'll probably outlive us all.
That's the hope, right?
Yeah, is that the hope?
Yeah.
Do you spend a lot of time sitting around hoping that your favorite movie stars outlive you.
No, actually, I have the opposite. I'm like, man, I hope Adam Sandler dies while I'm alive because I'd be so sad if I missed something.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. It's a selfish thing, but I
don't want to wish them dead because I love them so much. So really, we should just all like tuck everlast it together. If we can just all live for eternity at the same time, I think that's the better option.
I'm sorry I took this in a morbid direction, but there is something. I mean, I guess it's just like I feel, I guess maybe it's this film. Destroyer was pretty dark. But yeah, I guess I'm feeling appreciative, but I'm also already missing Nicole Kidman and those feelings of loss. They get to me. Do we have a final? I guess our final take on Nicole Kidman is good job, Nicole. Right?
Yeah, I mean, what a four very different movies we covered, and four very different performances. Like, if that isn't enough to whet anyone's palate of like how talented this person is, I don't know what would be.
Yeah. She's doing okay though, so no worries for Nicole. It's really for your benefit that you get to enjoy all the work she's done. She's already enjoyed it and moved on to better things. As I don't want to say better things, but we are moving on. We are moving on from our month of Kidmania, and coming up next, we're going to be focusing on something that I think we are a lot more ambivalent to than Nicole Kidman, which is the whole awards shenanigans and meshuggah and nonsense that is going to happen for the next month. But I think we've come up with a pretty fresh and I hope exciting way to engage this month of awards.
I agree.
Yeah. So what do we, I guess, overview, we're going to be talking about some films that are not Oscar nominees, but allow us to maybe discuss some of the Oscar nominees. And then we're going to be doing an episode about the Oscars pro and con with your Director's Wall co-host, AJ Gonzalez. And we're even going to be doing our own Noscars No Wards show that you'll be hearing more about throughout this month. But what's coming up next? Because it's your choice, Brian.
So next we are doing the Peter Bogdanovich film The Cat's Meow. Is sort of, in a way, an alternative or companion piece to Mank, which is up for the most Oscars, I believe. So yeah, Cat's Meow, I'm very excited. And it covers and kind of dips in that same world, that secret world of millionaires with William Randolph Hearst and Marion Davies. So please, if you can find that movie, watch it and then listen.
The secret world of millionaires? You're talking about the secret world of billionaires, my friend. Come on, don't think so small. But yeah, Cat's Meow was great. And we are recording this after we've recorded that episode. So I can tell you that there's some really exciting revelations there. And if you want to play a drinking game where every time I mispronounce Peter Bogdanovich's name as Peter Bogdanovich, you will get good and toasted by the end of that show. Sorry, Peter. And to all Bogdanoviches. You'd think that Andras Jones wouldn't make that mistake, since I'm always correcting people who want to call me Andras. So I'm really very sorry. But it's a great episode, and you should check out the film, The Cat's Meow, to get ready for it. And if you have any questions or thoughts or concerns, if you want to share your thoughts about Kidman or your own personal case of Kidmania, you can write to us at contact@theworldiswrongpodcast.com. You can find us at The World Is Wrong Podcast on Instagram. And yeah, you could, I'm sure there's other ways you can track us down, but really, why bother? Because well, basically, wherever you are, Nicole, just remember that the world is wrong, and it's probably even wrong about you.
Where did we meet?
Bar, Hammett, 2002. Where'd you grow up?
All over, mostly Las Cruces. What bar?
Tappy's. Why Las Cruces?
Dad got transferred to White Sands. He left, we stayed. Why were you always at Tappy's?
Bartender gave me a break on drinks. Where'd you go to school?
Centennial High, expelled, got my GED, Did half a year at Danyana Community, tossed for dealing. What was across the street from the bar?
Car dealership. Their sign was a huge neon bear. What was the mascot at Centennial?
Hawks. What was the name of the bouncer? The one with the hair?
Martin. How'd we meet?
Marlon.
Marlon. Fuck.
Fuck is right, they can check that.
Yeah, Marlon. Okay. How'd we meet?
We were both at the bar trying to order. A Dire Straits song came on the jukebox. You screamed, "Who put this shit on?" I turned and confessed.
We said it was a Pink Floyd song, Chris.
Well, fuck that. I like Dire Straits.
I'm just an aging drummer boy, and in the wars I used to play, and I've called a tune to many a torture session. Now they say I am a war criminal, and I'm fading away. Father, please hear my confession.